welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Bring Her Back, the new one from writer-directors Danny and Michael Philippou. Am I pronouncing that right? I'm not sure. But this is the duo that brought us Talk to Me a couple of years ago, which everybody loved. I was a little cool on. We'll talk about that during the conversation, but I really like this one. And so I'm very happy to be talking about it. Today, joining me, returning to the show, Paul Hibbard, filmmaker and founder of Hysteria Film Festival. And we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces on this one. So that is coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that said, let's get to this conversation. All right, Paul Hibbard is back with us. It's been a while. How's it going, Paul?
Great, Dave. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk about this one. We're talking Bring Her Back. As I told you ahead of time, and for anyone who listens to the show and doesn't realize, I was not a big fan of these guys' first movie, and I know it just kind of blew up the world of like cinephiles. Everybody was just so in on it and so excited to see what they would do next, and I felt like I was the only person who didn't like it, and here I am loving this movie. I'm very surprised.
Interesting. I'm kind of the opposite in a way. I don't know if I loved Talk to Me, but I personally, I don't think anything too deep was going on with that movie, but I just loved their style. It just felt like this like fresh style on the scene. And I know these guys started off making YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of like these YouTube directors who are doing these videos that, you know, kind of have that sort of like trolling YouTube vibe to it, and then they're going to go make a feature film, it kind of, I think, could be a recipe for a disaster in many other hands. But I feel like their style, that kind of like kinetic, that YouTube style really worked, and it gave like a really like visual film. But I wasn't necessarily head over heels in love with that. I didn't think they were like the second coming of like Sam Raimi or anything.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is maybe what some critics might have wanted to say going into that movie, especially with all the style and all that kind of stuff. And I think maybe it was a little overhyped for me or something like that. But, you know, that being said, though, going into this movie, I really just wasn't really sure what to expect. And it's an interesting one. I think we'll get into some really good stuff here. And, you know, I think the one thing I think is very easy to agree on, even if we, you know, aren't exactly in the same place on it, is Sally Hawkins is really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's incredible. I have loved her for years. And it's just, I mean, even after all the roles that she's done and the ways that she's proven herself, she doesn't really get as many opportunities as you think that she should. But whenever she does, I mean, she was great, and it just wasn't surprising at all how amazing she was at this film. You just knew she was going to knock it out of the park.
Exactly, 100%. Let's start getting into it, though. What do you have for your first puzzle piece here for Bring Her Back?
Okay, so what I'm going to do with this film, because it's interesting because I do like Talk to Me a lot. I like this one less, but I still think it's a very accomplished film. I think they're great filmmakers in the sense that they know how to achieve what they want to achieve, and that is a large part of being a competent, great filmmakers. Mm-hmm. So they are great in that sense. But something with the movie didn't really sit well with me, and the first piece kind of leads into this, and it is the film Martyrs, the French film. But I think you could even give a broader puzzle piece and just say it's the French extremity movement, or you could just even say extreme cinema and brutal cinema altogether.
Yeah.
And it had me like thinking, because when Martyrs came out, it was in the middle of that French extremity movement, and at that time, it was also the middle of the torture porn movement in America. And I noticed that there was like such a difference in how both styles were very violent, but they had different points to them. And I remember this one film critic one time said that torture porn, like Saw and Hostel, is more about the torture, and Martyrs and what the French were doing was more about the pain. And I thought that distinction allowed them to say, to make better points, because I think most people would consider like Martyrs a much smarter movie than something like Hostel. And I think with this film, it is more about the pain. I don't think the violence in this movie is done flippantly. I don't think that it's done necessarily irresponsibly,
Mm.
but the thing I feel like is maybe missing is the point isn't it's like the point isn't quite as big as the movies that go very big try to make. So something like Martyrs, which was this film about the French and the rich French people using younger people and torture them to get their means, it was very much this allegory for the war in Iraq.
Mm.
And you can look at like other like extreme form of cinema, like Last House on the Left or something like that, where it's these big political movements are these political messaging is being made by the violence and the extreme. And in this one, I felt like they were using a lot of like extreme violence, but the point felt very s- small. It
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
very personal, and it felt very redundant to a point that horror's been making for a while. But I'm just working on my thoughts. What do you think about all that?
Well, no, and I think redundant is an interesting word because I do think that they are just going right back to the well of what they were kind of doing with Talk to Me. Even though I like this one more than Talk to Me, I think that they're kind of working out the same issues between both of these movies and just in a slightly different way, but dealing with the same kind of ideas, the same kind of questions in a horror kind of movie. Martyrs is a really interesting one. There's a movie that might fit into that whole world that I couldn't think. I don't actually know what it is, and maybe you know, but I always see this picture going around. You'll see it in like the horror movie groups, but it's like of this creature thing eating a guy's head. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a very popular like online movie that you'll always see people talking about as like the great extreme movies of the last 20 years. And I can't think of what it is, but all the VHS stuff reminded me of that so much. And I don't know what that movie is. Someone's going to write in and be like, you idiot.
I know what it is. I can't come to me. It's going to come to me during the episode.
Yeah. All right. Wait, just chime in whenever you do think of it. But yeah, no, I like that. And you know what? I'm just going to jump right into my first puzzle piece because I think it goes along with some of the stuff we're saying here. But I mean, it's so damn great and so much fun. And that's the thing. I had fun with this movie, even though it is brutal. And I know a lot of people talk about how just dark and just punishing this movie Bring Her Back is, but I had a lot of fun with it despite all that. I was thinking a lot of Hellraiser, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and just the idea of people doing something that they just should not be doing. They should not be fucking with any of this. You see the video that this woman watches, and it's like the opening scenes, and I actually thought I was going to be out on this movie right from the get-go because like, oh boy, here's this like, shock stuff or whatever, and I didn't think I was really going to like it. But on the video is all these just horrific demonic ritualistic stuff going on, and it's so blatantly evil. You're like, how could anybody, no matter how much pain they have, no matter how much they're suffering because of their loss or any of that, how could they get into this stuff? And you see the stuff that goes on in Hellraiser. It's just so funny and ridiculous that this person would go through all this stuff, and then just all these evil creatures showing up and all this like crazy over the top stuff. I think there's a lot of similarities there, and I think like if this movie, I know that they're making a Talk to Me 2 and 3. I don't know what the hell that's going to be like, but I know if they were to like expand what they did here with Bring Her Back, I feel like we would get into more of these demonic entities that kind of like are egging on these people to just give into their worst desires and their worst, whatever the hell they want out of life and out of all this evilness. And so I think that there's a lot going on that's similar with Hellraiser there.
No, that's a really good one. I didn't think about that, and when you first said it, I was like, I was questioning it, but when you explained it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And God, that movie is just, I actually just watched it for the first time like 2 years ago, I think. And it's one of those movies I don't know how I hadn't gotten around to. And just the extremes that the human mind will go to in coming up with this shit is just, that's the one right there,
No, that is awesome.
So much fun. What do you got next?
Okay, so for my next one, I'm gonna say the film's Jennifer Kent, because I've seen people talk about the Babadook, and if that's on your piece, if that's one that you have, we should get to it because I'm more focusing on the Nightingale, her second film, and the Nightingale. You've seen it, right?
Sure. Yeah, and
Okay.
I had thought of the Babadook, but I did not include it on my list. So we could just kind of combine them there and just throw them
Okay, we,
both
we
on.
can combine them.
Yeah,
I actually thought I've seen everybody say the Babadook, so I actually thought that was gonna be your first, and I was gonna
right
follow
on.
up with this,
Yeah, there
but
you go.
you threw an awesome curveball. So the Nightingale, as you know, is just an incredibly brutal film. It is a rape revenge. Everybody calls it a rape revenge, but I think the worst thing that happens is her infant child is murdered
Mm,
in the beginning, and it's absolutely terrible. And what I think that she did so brilliantly, along with both films being Australian films, that's a reason to kind of connect them. But what I think she did so brilliantly, it was a film that kind of started about one person, their loss and their grief, and then they went when she went for revenge, it expanded, like the
mm,
message and the themes and the politics of the film expanded to more of a kind of a colonization message with the Europeans and the Aboriginal people, and I thought that that was an interesting, direction that she took, and I was thinking about that movie while thinking about this one too, and trying to think of, like, other films that have used this kinda, like, sort of brutalist filmmaking to make a point, and I thought of hers, and but she did the thing that I kinda wish this film did more of. Like, I wish this film stepped beyond just the point of loss of a child.
yeah, and I think the Nightingale. I mean, just taking something that's just so brutal, it definitely fits in with this really well. And the Babadook, I think, fits in really well because I mean, we all associate any of these kinds of grief, trauma, horror movies of the last 15 years with the Babadook, but then also creepy kid movies. We appreciate, we definitely connect there
Yeah.
as well.
When you think of, like, Jennifer Kent, though, like what you're saying, Babadook and Nightingale kind of like follow like different themes, but does it seem like the Nightingale is the second step in that direction, where maybe like that first one, Babadook is maybe a little more like this film, and then the second one, she's like, I'm gonna kind of explore those themes again, but this time I'm gonna get a little bit wider about what I'm saying.
Sure,
Like,
yeah. I think that's absolutely fair. And I mean, again, that movie, as brutal as it is, it also it encompasses so much of that experience and so many different aspects of what that person is going through and what anybody who's going through that goes through these kinds of things. And yeah, it's a difficult one, and this is a difficult one as well. But yeah, no, I
mhm.
think it's a great one to include here. So I will go for my next one. Speaking of the brutality of all this, I'm going to go with Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead remake. As far as just the meanness and just pure violence to the body of what both movies do, there's definitely parallels you can make between the whole knife scene with this kid chewing on the knife and the stuff that happens in the Evil Dead movie in that cabin and all of that just horrific shit with just body horror. I mean, it's a different kind of. You say body horror, but it's obviously like a different definition of body horror. It's just pure awful, angry, mean violence, and it's different from what we associate with like a Cronenberg or something like that. But and again, this comes back to me liking this movie. I feel like a lot of people like. I don't know. There's like this line that they don't like to cross, and they say that like, "Oh, this is violence against kids. I won't watch that." And I'm like, "This is just some demonically possessed child." Like, like yeah, he's kind of still in there, and he,
Mhm.
spoilers, but he is by the end. He's coming back or whatever. But I mean, nobody's okay in this movie. Like everybody
Right.
is, it's not a kid. It's some little demon shit, and so it's just violence, and if you're into that kind of gore stuff, like it works really well. It's really effectively made scene between all the effects, the I believe, I mean, it looked very very good and raw and like gnarly, but also the sound design of that scene was fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, you could just feel the sound in it. Um, yeah, no, my next one, is The Loved Ones. Have you seen that
I
one?
haven't seen that.
It is, I wanted to focus on Australia. I wanted to stay with Australia, and Australia has a history of brutal cinema, but a lot of it is focused on the outback, and what I liked about The Loved Ones, it came out around 2010, and that was one that kinda took the brutality and the ugliness of outback Australia horror, but put it into suburban Australia. And it also kind of had like this dreamlike feeling to it that I feel like this film had at times.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting when I was watching The Loved Ones, because obviously we know that there's huge metropolitan cities in Australia, but if you were raised on cinema and you hear Australian horror, you're gonna just think of the sand and deserts in the
Sure.
outback. And to take that same feel and put it into the suburbs like The Loved Ones did, it reminded me of how this film did it too.
Interesting.
And and I love that kind of like brutal, like that kind of brutal suburban Australian horror.
I'll have to check that out. I mean, I haven't seen it, but, like, everything that I always see, it just goes so far. Anything it's just like you have to if you're gonna be setting the movie in Australia. It just
Yeah.
has to go so far, and it's always, definitely something worth checking out. So,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
I will go for my next one. So, I will admit I still have not seen the 2022, Danish original, so I'm going with the 2024 remake of Speak No Evil, the one with James McAvoy.
Hmm.
But as far as this person who just seems so just, they just seem like a fun person, even though they're a little kooky. And they've got this kid. The kid doesn't talk for reasons unknown. And then, of course, we find out just all the awful shit going on. There's lots of secrets in a shed out back, all this stuff. And there's just no way to get out of that house once you're in there. I think there's a lot of setting similarities between the two movies and a lot of setup with the characters. And both are movies where it's like you kind of you get this person who just seems so nice, and even as things are kind of escalating and going off the deep end, they still kind of seem really nice. They're still
Hmm.
really fun to be around. Sally Hawkins is just, she's great right up until like maybe the last 20 minutes. Then she's like completely off her rocker. But up until that
Hmm.
point, even as she's kind of losing her mind, we're still like, oh, but she's kind of fun because she's Sally Hawkins and she's great. And same goes for James McAvoy. It's still really fun, even as he's starting to show that the seams are splitting throughout that whole movie. And especially with the reveal of the kid, I think it's a very easy comparison there.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I think you just said that they have the reveal of the kid in that film. It's almost like this would be that film if you were seeing it through the kid's point of view,
Yeah, yeah.
because how you see it in the movie that we saw, we saw through the other couple's point of view, but I'm sure that kid had a much different experience where it was much more threatening, and James McAvoy probably felt a lot more like Sally Hawkins in this film
Sure.
too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the whole situation is creepy as hell, no matter what, even when the nice
Mhm.
stuff is happening. So yeah, definitely. Well, what do you got next?
Next, I have The Kill List, which is Ben Wheatley's film,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that is one that I text you about what you thought about the sort of ambiguous direction that the supernatural and the cult stuff was taking in this film, and I was kind of in the middle of it with Bring Her Back, because it felt like there was like I do hate when films over explain things too much to get it in the script, and it's like if you're gonna force something into a script, just do it as smoothly as possible, and even if it doesn't 100% work, who cares? Just put it in there. And I felt like in a way that this did this, but I also kind of had a feeling that they didn't know how to make the points that they were trying to make without something so outlandish happening. So
Mm.
I was thinking of a movie that used kind of cult and supernatural aspects in a way that was ambiguous, in a way that kind of haunted you. And for me, it was Kill List. I don't know, have you seen that
I
one?
actually haven't. No, I was going down a little Ben Wheatley rabbit hole at one point, and that was going to be my next one, and I just never got around to it.
Yeah. So it comes in towards the end, and it kind of follows the rabbit hole of exploration that the characters in that film go down themselves. So in that way, it felt a little bit smoother. Now, obviously, I won't tell you exactly what happened, so you can watch it yourself. But it
Mm.
kind of has that same thing where afterwards, you even kind of question, like, was there something supernatural happening,
All
and
right.
how much did the cult really play? And I feel like in this film, like I had that feeling too.
Yeah, I did as well. Yeah, you wonder like, yeah, we're seeing it all, but like how much of this is just movie, craziness because it just doesn't seem like this person could have gotten that far along. I mean, just this lady just
Right.
living out in this house, she's like into some insane shit, and like, yeah, it's very contrived in a way, but in a entertaining way, I thought. But
Yes, definitely.
I'll go with so this one might be a bit of a stretch, but I was thinking of that whole thing that she's doing with trying to bring her daughter back with this whole ritual and all this stuff, and you have to eat the person and then regurgitate into another person. There's a lot of really interesting stuff here, and again, this might be a bit of a stretch, but I was thinking of Being John Malkovich and the ending reveal of that movie, of that there's these people who have known about this for a while, and they have this big plan to basically be reborn as I mean, I honestly I've seen Being John Malkovich like a dozen times and still can't fully explain what happens in the end of that movie. But the whole plan for these people that are kind of a little bit like a cult themselves, and what they are planning to do with John Malkovich's body and with being reborn, basically. And it's a really weird way to kind of I don't know, try to figure out a way to come back. But I love that they did that. Like I love that they came up with something that is really interestingly unique, and I haven't really seen anything quite like it before. And of course, that's something when you think of Being John Malkovich, like you're like, I have never seen anything quite like this before.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
My next one, a lot of these pieces I've been kind of working on my thoughts, and I think I might maybe sound more negative on it than I intend to, because I do ultimately like it. I gave it ultimately a positive rating.
Mhm.
So to use a piece where I compliment the film very well is Repulsion, Polanski's film,
Sure.
where it is this sort of descent into madness. And Repulsion's a great film, but that has created a line of films, and it didn't necessarily start with that one, but a lot of films now, if it's a situation where someone is stricken by grief and they're going down this path of what's real and what's not real, they're going to usually be the protagonist, and you're going to kind of experience the film through their point of view. And I like in this one that she is the antagonist in the movie, and we can kind of see her descent from the outside. And what makes it interesting, makes it kind of bolder, is that we get a more of an objective view on what is real and what isn't, and what she is seeing or not. And I felt like that was maybe a braver decision, because it's probably easier to make the vision of the film, be the protagonist instead of being someone else who's seeing it happen. But
Yeah.
I also thought it was kind of a fresh take on it, because as trauma horror has taken over, and as these kind of movies have happened, you are always going down the descent with them, and in this case, the descent is more happening to you, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, that absolutely is interesting. And to that point, should we just lump Hereditary in here? Because I feel like anybody who's listening to this is going to be like, well, I was thinking of Hereditary, and I think that you
Yeah.
should think of Hereditary. And of course, as that's one of the big ones. I mean, we talked about the Babadook already, but you draw that line from that through Hereditary, and then it's like, boom, we have 10 years of trauma horror. And
Mhm.
it's never going away. But we also have the huge centerpiece performance, Toni Collette in that case, Sally Hawkins here, and the effects on a family of this kind of like domino effect, repercussions of everything that goes on, from death, from grief, from trauma, all these kind of things. And so I think Hereditary, it just kind of has to be in the conversation, and it kind of ties back to Repulsion, and just the way that we don't know necessarily point of view at all times.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's good.
well, what do you got next then?
I got kind of a silly one with The Shape of Water, because I was thinking of it with her lying at the end in the water. I
Yeah,
was like, this looks just straight up like the poster.
yeah,
But it's kind of a silly one. But just to go back to Sally Hawkins, she's incredible. Shape of Water is one that's fun to point out, because along with that fun imagery, it was her, I think, getting recognized on a national stage.
sure.
Uh, but the first time I personally noticed her as an actor was Mike Leigh's Happy Go Lucky,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which she was absolutely fantastic in that film. So I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but I had it in a piece too that I wanted Shape of Water, just to be a kind of a silly one, just to pay honor to, I think, one of the best actors who should be A-list. And it's like when she gets a chance, she's A-list. She just isn't A-list in the sense that she gets as many chances as A-list actors get.
No, yeah, absolutely. She's had a very weird career trajectory, but I mean, she's out there doing great stuff though the whole time. So, and yeah, that
Mhm.
you're absolutely right though about that poster. That's the image right there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess I'll throw my silly one out there, which I didn't actually write down any specific movie, but pick a psycho foster parent movie. There's dozens of them on Lifetime that me and my wife watch all the time. She could probably send me an entire list of them. But it is like a whole subgenre, and so that subgenre taken to a just horrific extreme. I feel like that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I was trying to think of other ones. Most of the other ones I came up with things like I was thinking a bunch of like Rebecca Hall ones. I was thinking of Night House. Thinking of what
That
was
was a
that
good
other one
one.
she did with Tim Roth? Was that Resurrection?
Hmm.
All of those things I think can fit, but I all think they sort of follow the line of films that we've already talked about. I think a lot of those things are the steps from Hereditary to Repulsion all the way back.
Yeah, yeah.
But for some reason, I was thinking of Rebecca Hall, who's kind of become um, a recent actor with those two films, who really plays somebody descending into madness.
Hey, there's never a wrong time to bring up Rebecca Hall. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm all for those puzzle pieces there. Yeah, I only have one more, and I was almost reluctant to bring this one up because I haven't seen this movie in like 20, maybe even 30 years. Uh, but I was thinking of Stir of Echoes, the Kevin Bacon movie, and
Hmm.
not because of anything specifically that happens in the movie, but just the feeling of like this is some bad shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
This person, it feels really wrong. And again, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I don't know what I would think now, but I remember when I watched Stir of Echoes when it came out in 1998, I believe 98 or 99. I remember watching it and just being like, this movie is plugged in, and I think Repulsion would be, a great example of a
Hmm.
movie that there's always been movies like this, but for one from that era, it is just so plugged into just this evil supernatural feeling that just doesn't feel right, but then you also don't know anything that's happening, if any of it is actually happening to any of the characters. David Koepp is having a great year this year,
He is, yeah.
with Presence and his both of his collaborations there with Soderbergh. But
Hmm.
yeah, I the Stir of Echoes is on my rewatch list just because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Have you seen it in a while or
I
ever?
haven't seen it in a while, but it's so funny that you mentioned that because I was having a conversation with my friends recently. We're all like, we haven't seen that movie in a while, but what is the one? Is there a moment in Stir of Echoes that sticks out to you?
It,
Uh,
it's just Kevin Bacon. It's just his face and
okay.
just, that's all. That's it. Why do you have one?
There's a scene where someone's fingernail breaks on the floor,
Ugh.
and it traumatized the hell out of me, and I was talking to my friends, and we were like, "We have not seen that movie in forever," but all of them can remember her fingernail breaking backwards against the floor, so, I haven't seen it in a while, but I do remember liking it a lot.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I think we got into a lot of great stuff here. Any closing thoughts? Anything that we didn't bring up that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, I'll just repeat that, a lot of this was working out my thoughts, so I really appreciate that opportunity
Sure.
to
Yeah.
do that. Usually when I come on here, I have, like, a list of, things that I have almost like declarative statements behind everything, and this one was, this film that I was fully engaged in the whole time in every way it was a very successful film. It just had me thinking afterwards just about all these things about brutal cinema and trauma, porn, horror that's going on right now, and, the film for the benefit of it, I think, kinda got these thoughts going in my head, so
Yeah.
it was fun to be able to talk about it on a podcast and kinda work out the thoughts as I went.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I only other thing I would say, one thing I was interested in with this, and I liked about it, I didn't find this movie to be very scary. Like I thought it was maybe disturbing or messed up or dark, devastating, sad, a lot of those
Mhm.
kinds of things. But scary is not what I would call this one, which is, I don't know, it's just refreshing to me anyway for a Friday night horror movie. A lot of the A24 ones lately have all been
Mhm.
trying to have like the shock jump scares and all that kind of stuff. And to me, this felt a little bit like something different, even if it is, within that kind of subgenre of trauma horror that we have just talked about for 30 minutes, that is just never going away. But I did think that it did something a little bit different. And again, to bring it back to Talk to Me, I thought that's all that movie was. And so that's part of why it didn't really quite work for me with that one. But I also wanted to mention just a really funny thing when we saw this movie. At the end, there's like a dedication to somebody who has passed away. I'm not sure who it was or what that's all about. But when that screen came up, somebody in front of us in the movie theater gasped and said, "Oh my God, this was real?" My wife and I just cracked up. Like, people are nuts. Like, I don't know.
You should just let them keep that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Paul, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
So I've been all in my festival mode. So I can plug that now, but it kind of ties into what I have been watching recently.
Sure.
So I run Hysteria Fest, which is this festival in St. Louis that goes July 10th through 13th, and it's really cool. It's a growing festival, and I've been watching the films for this year, and all of them are great. I'm not picking any favorites, but there's one that I love so much. It is called Haze. I think it's good to mention it this month because it is June is a Pride Month, and it is a queer horror, and it is a Canadian horror film that just kind of has this suffocating feel to it. Like, I don't know if I've seen a movie that just suffocates you with the tension of scenes that nothing is really happening in it. And like, it was the kind of movie where I just had to like pause it because just the filmmaking itself was almost just overwhelming. I love it so much. If you're in St. Louis, you can watch it, but if you're not in St. Louis, it is going to Shudder in September, I believe. September or October, it's going to go to Shudder.
Nice.
So Haze, fantastic. And whenever you get the chance to watch it, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Well, Paul, tell people where they can find Hysteria Fest and everything else you're up to.
Sure. It's hysteriafilmfestival.com. You can find us, Hysteria Film Fest, on Instagram and Facebook. This year we're doing Canadian horror. We're focusing on that. We're the rep films that we're playing are Dead Ringers, Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. We're doing a horror prom before that. And we're going to play the horror slasher film Curtains from the early 80s. We're also playing Dead Lover from Sundance and just a bunch of other Canadian films, but we're playing films from all over the world too, but Canada's the focus this year.
How many years have you been doing this?
This is our 4th year.
Oh, nice.
So it's our 4th year. It's in St. Louis. It takes place at this place called Arcadin. We're still at our original location, but this year we've grown so much that we've had to do a few other venues. And then next year is our 5-year anniversary, and we're already too big for where we're at. Like, it's going to be pretty tight this year. So we are looking ahead to next year, and we want to do something really exciting for year number 5.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm excited to hear that it keeps growing and that you're doing some really fun stuff with that. That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I love doing it. I'm a filmmaker. I still technically am, but I think running the festival has given me a satisfaction that filmmaking never did. So I love doing it.
Right on. Well, Paul, it's great as always to get you back, and we'll get you back again sometime.
All right. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Bring Her Back. Thank you to Paul Hibbard for joining me on that one. And thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying Piecing It Together, of course, make sure you're subscribed. But you could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where I continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. You could also check out my Substack, where I keep you updated on all the things I've got going on with the podcast, as well as my music. And there's a whole bunch of other places you could check me out, but you can find all of that in the show notes down below. But once again, thank you so much for listening. We got a lot more Piecing It Together on the way. We actually just squeezed this episode in yesterday, but I have like 5 other episodes ready to release. But I figured this movie just came out on Friday, and I already got it recorded, so let's just get this one out immediately. So, yeah, you can always find advanced episodes on our Patreon. They're produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and my music career. That is at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. If you want to support the show, you could do it over there. I feel like I just did a little lisp, which I just got Invisalign braces, and so far it's not really affecting my talking, but I feel like I just did it there. But anyway, it's not too bad. I'm surviving. I'm getting through the braces. I'll live for the next 18 months and have a nice smile at the end of it. Anyway, let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do, and we're talking about bringing somebody back. I don't know, this doesn't really fit. Anyway, I'm going with a track called Rewind from my album Missing Pieces that came out earlier this year. So I hope you enjoy Rewind, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.